Welcome back everybody to Kaizoku Dad channel. Today we have an updated OP06 Arlong deck. Now, I'm really excited about OP06 because with all of the yellow cards that we have now so far, I think like an Arlong deck can go in different directions. And one of those directions, and it's what I'm basing this video off, is kind of a Wano build. Because in OP06 we got Kiku no Jo, we have Hiyori, and we have the Wano Zoro card that you can now get from regionals. All of those Wano cards I think are just really good, and building kind of a Wano Arlong deck can possibly be very fun to play. And so today I want to present to you this Wano build. And in the future, I'll probably do another Arlong deck that goes, that's not so Wano centric. But in this one, I wanted to focus on that. So I also, I'm kind of taking into consideration the ban list. I know, it hasn't really been announced in North America yet. I know in Japan, we know for sure it's going live April 1st. We don't know if that's gonna be the same for North America. But just in case, right, I'm just gonna not put reject in this deck. But if you want to try reject until it's actually banned in North America, feel free. But this is a deck list that's like post-ban ready. Okay? So without further ado, let's go ahead and check the deck out. Okay, so here is a deck list that we are using. So we have our Wano 2K characters. So we have Izo. We only have 2 copies because I wanted to really focus on the Hiyori, adding 4 copies of Hiyori and 4 copies of Beige, because I think Beige is just a really good trigger, really good 2K, and just a really strong effect. Izo is also really good. She can help rest. He can help rest a character, a 4 or less, 4 cost or less. So I think Izo's really good. And so is Hiyori. So like you can like swap a card from life with a trigger from hand and put it into the life. I think that's really good. So I think I put more emphasis on Hiyori, so I only put 2. But in total we have 10 2K counters, all with really strong effects. If you want to like add more Izos and more Hioris and less Beige, feel free. But I like this version simply because like Beige is just he can save you, right? We've all been in that situation where you probably would have lost if it wasn't for Beige. But Izo's good too. But yeah, this is this is what we have. We have our Wano Searcher, Momonosuke. Even though he says like Wano Country, any card that has Wano is searchable with Momonosuke. So you can search himself, Momonosuke. Like if you play him and you only see another Searcher Momonosuke, you can pick him up, no problem. And let's see, we have our Kawamatsu Kiku no Joes. Kiku no Joes are just really good. It's a strong 4K, 4 cost 6K attacker with a really good effect. What I really like about these Wano triggers is that unlike the triggers that Arlong used before, like Cracker, like Smoothie, or even Sanji, is that you don't need to discard a card in your hand to play these from life. All you have to make sure really is that your opponent is at 3 life or less. And if we look at the meta, there's just a lot of multicolored leaders. So they start off with 4. All you really need to do is just attack once, probably with like 7,000, to get them down to 3 life, and then everything is free. There are of course some exceptions, like for example Moria, who's going to start off at 5. Just with them, you just got to keep that in mind, that you have to get them down to 3 to be able to play these trigger cards essentially for free. And that's what I really liked about the Wano build. But yes, keep that in mind. So you'll also notice that I didn't include Sanji. I did include Brule simply because I wanted to keep that. Sanji is good. He's a really good blocker. But hand advantage I think is just really important. And if you trigger a Brule from life, again, you're not discarding the card to play a trigger, to play a blocker. It's essentially just a free blocker, and I think that's really good. And besides, this deck already runs a lot of blockers, I think, because we have the Rosinante, 4 copies. We have the Momonosuke, the 5 cost 6k blocker, who has a really good effect that we'll get into in a bit. And then we have the Brûlés. So there is no shortage of blockers. And also we have like Punk Gibson, 2 copies. The new OP06, you're the one who should disappear. 3 copies of this. This is just a really good card because as good as like Kiku no Jo is and some of these other ones, like they don't have counters. And this yellow card helps us use those cards without counters, and and essentially turns them into like a 3k. You get 3k worth of counters for these 2 cards for playing this and discarding the card. So, and we also have Arrow, 2 copies of Arrow, which is also a Wano card. So in total, I think there's 28 Wano cards that you can search off, including like Yamato, the 9 cost Yamato, your 2Ks, events, and I think the most important though is your trigger cards that you can use for Arlong's ability. So when you're using Momonosuke, I think that's what you're mostly searching for, is these these 4 cost or less trigger cards that you can use off of Arlong, or you want to search off, your 2k counters. But it depends on the game, on the match. Searching out Momonosuke is good too, or your top end like Yamato. But this is the deck, and so you might be wondering, why Rosinante, why Punk Gibson? Let me go ahead and get into that right now. Let's talk about some math here with Arlong. So let's talk about going first, right? So you're starting off with 1 Dawn, 3, 5, 7, 9, and then you're finally at 10. So let's talk about that first. So if you're going first, then starting from your 3rd turn, so your first turn, you have 1 Dawn. You can't do much. You can play Momonosuke. I wouldn't suggest it though, simply because you definitely want to guarantee a search off of him, and playing him on 1 Dawn, he can easily be KO, especially if you're playing against Sakazuki. So usually first Dawn on your first turn, going first with 1 Dawn, you usually just pass. Your second turn with your 3 Dawn, that's when you want to use your effect, right? So you attach 2 Dawn to Arlong, leave 1 up, you attack, you use the remaining Dawn you rested to activate Arlong's effect, so you're attacking for 7,000, and then you're summoning a 4 cost with a trigger, right? That's your second turn. Now, your 3rd turn. So ideally with Arlong, you want to be able to make the most of his ability. So for 3 Dawn, you're cheating out a 4 cost character with trigger. That's essentially how you're kind of thinking about it, because you're using 3 Dawn to summon a 4 cost and attack for 7. You want to be able to take advantage of that ability from Arlong. So if you're on your 3rd turn, if you're still doing that, you're on 5 Dawn, you're using 3 for Arlong's ability, you still have 2 Dawn left. Okay? Hence the +2. Okay? That's on your 3rd turn. On your fourth turn, you're using 3 Dawn, but you still have 4 Dawn left up. And then on your 6th turn, you're using 3 Dawn. This is when you have 9 Dawn in total. You're going to use 3 of those Dawns for Arlong's ability, and you're still going to have 6 Dawn open. Okay? So these are kind of like what I call magic numbers, because having strong cards that can use up the remaining Dawn is key, I think, for Arlong. So this is if you're going first. If you're going second, obviously it's a little different, right? So on your first turn, you're gonna have 2 Dawn, but you're not going to be able to do much. This is when you can use Momonosuke, right? Because it costs 1 to play, and then rest 1 Dawn to search. So on your first turn, going second with 2 Dawn up, I would use Momonosuke. Now, your second turn, you're going to have 4 Dawn. And you're going to use 3 for Arlong's ability, and you're going to have 1 up. Okay, so that's on your second turn. On your third turn, you're gonna be at 6 Dawn. You're gonna use 3, and you're still gonna have 3 up, and so on and so forth, right? So again, the 2, 4, and 6, 1, 3, and 5. I think those are key, right? Key numbers to take advantage. You need to have strong cards that cost that much to have a strong turn. That's how I look at it. So then, if we go back into the deck, right, that's how we have some 1 cost, Momonosuke, right? 2, 4, and 6. 2, that's why we have Rosinante, a blocker that costs 2 with a really good ability, right? It can protect any rested character. So whether it's by an attack or an effect, Rosinante can protect them. A strong 2 cost. That's why we have 4 copies. And 4s, we have a bunch of 4 costs with our just regular trigger cards that we want to use off of Arlong. So like, for example, this is what, our third turn, going second, when you have, or going first, when you're at 7 Dawn, right? You use Arlong's ability, you use 3, you summon, let's say, Kiku no Jo, you have 4 left. You can use that remaining 4 to either bring out another attacker like Nekomushi, Inudashi, or you can use 2 to put out Rosinante and 2 to search out, right? So that's a strong turn. You're attacking for 7, you're using Arlong's ability to cheat out a character, and you're using all of your remaining Dawn to either build up a board, defend your board, search, do other things. You can even leave 2 up for Punk Gibson. Right? That's why we have Punk Gibson. We only have 2 copies, but that's why we have Punk Gibson to kind of for defense and have fully utilize all of our Dawn. So we have Arrow as well. Cost 1. It has a really strong trigger effect that can potentially save you. Okay? So we have even Brûlé. Like, generally speaking, you want Brûlé in life, but on those turns where you have Brûlé in your hand and you're going second and you have 3 Dawn left open, just play Brûlé, right? So this is why we have some of these cards that normally you probably wouldn't include, but like Kawamatsu, I think there's other cards that are better. Like you might think like, well, shouldn't I have just like 4 copies of Inuarashi instead of Kawamatsu if Inu has like 1,000, at least has a counter, Kawamatsu doesn't. Well, it's to, generally speaking, to be able to play when you're going second, having those extra 3 Dawn up somewhere in your turns, and then playing Kawamatsu would be really you'll be able to play Kawamatsu over Inuarashi. So that's kind of the idea. And of course you have like your 7 cost. We only have 1 Hody Jones and an L, because we have Yamato as well. Generally speaking, I think this is enough. This is fine, because with Momonosuke here, you can play like, let's just say you're at 8 Dawn, you use the leader's ability, play Momonosuke, and you have 2 bodies on board. You can even probably heal, right? This is why I like Hiyori, because you can use Hiyori early on to put a trigger in your life, and Hiyori just stays on the field, and then you can play Momonosuke, you can put Hiyori back into your life, and boom, you get a life, and then you get a 2k. So that's why I like that combo as well. But that's just some quick math. I think these are key numbers to take into consideration when playing Arlong, because you want to be able to abuse his ability and use the rest of your Dawn efficiently. So that's the key. Let's now talk about the Mulligan. And so what you see here is what I would call probably like a really great hand, right? You have a 4 cost trigger card that you can use for Arlong's ability. You have a 2k counter. you have a searcher, you have a character that costs 2 that you can use later on to kind of, fill out the rest of your curve. And it's a blocker, strong effect. So when you're starting off, generally speaking, you want to see a card that you can use with your leader's ability. It doesn't have to be Kiku no Jo, but you want to see at least one, preferably 2. A 2K counter, Punk Gibson or Rosinante, a searcher. That's generally what you want to see. I have here a website where you can. So here's the deck, right? Here's the deck. Has a bunch of stats. What's included. I like this feature here. Draw a sample hand. So let's go ahead and use it. See what it gives us, and I want to share my thoughts if it's a good hand or a bad hand. All right. So this is our hand, and then this is our life. Our life looks really stacked. You have Onami, you have 2 Kiku no Joes, you have a Punk Gibson. I think this is our life. We don't get to look at our life, but that's really great. This is our hand. If I'm going first, we have Kawamatsu, which we'd be able to use. We have Enel, right? If I'm going first, we'll be able to play him on turn 7, and we have a 2K, a Searcher, and Rosinante. I think this is a good hand. I would probably keep it, because on our first turn, we do nothing. Second turn, if we're going first, second turn, we'd use Leader's ability, play out Kawamatsu, and then our third turn, we can use Momonosuke. If we haven't drawn a second card with a trigger to use with Arlong's ability, we can use Momonosuke to search. And then still have enough Dawn to be able to use Leader's ability. So I think this is a good hand. If I'm going second, it's still a good hand, because if I'm going second, I have Momonosuke. I can play him on my turn 1, search out another Wano card with a trigger to play with Leader's ability. And we have Kawamatsu, so I think it's fine. Let's redraw. Our life, we have Beige, Onami, not bad. And then our hand, we have again Momonosuke, Onami, Kiku no Jo. I think this is an okay hand. Going second, this is really good, I think. Going first is okay too. What makes it really good is this, like one trigger, one character to use with our ability and the searcher. Let's see if we can redraw something that doesn't have Momonosuke, because I think Momonosuke just makes almost any hand really good. Okay, so this one. Yeah, no Momonosuke. If I'm going first, then I see that I have Nekomushi, which I can use, and I have a Nail, which I can play on curve on turn, my 7 Dawn turn. I have a 2K, and I have ways to protect my Nekomushi. I think this is a playable hand. Obviously not the most optimal, but I think it's playable because on our first turn, on our 1 Dawn, we're not going to do anything. And then our second turn, we're going to play Nekomushi. We're going to draw, and then on our third turn, we're going to draw again, and we probably would have taken something from life. And in this case, the first one would be Beige, which is kind of useless for us. So, yeah, I think this is a playable hand. I wouldn't mind mulliganing this, because I would like to have at least two of these attackers for Arlong's ability. And 2 Punk Gibsons is okay, but again, the only reason why I would probably play this, keep it, is just because I have the Enel and I have the Nekomushi. And I think that's fine. And 2 draws to draw into potentially another 4-cost attacker is fine. Is what I would be hoping for. Life doesn't seem too stacked, but we have 3 2Ks. We have Brule and an Onami. So, not the strongest life, but it's an okay hand. With all of these 2Ks and like the Punk Gibson, we're definitely trying to. The game is kind of. Our deck is telling us to like defend a lot, One more time. So, our life. We have an Arrow, 2 Kawamatsus, 2K. Not bad. Not a bad life. Our hand, we have Kiku no Jo, we have Yamato, Rosinante, Capone, and Brule. If I am going first, it's not a bad hand, I think. Again, this one is playable simply because we have a Yamato and the Kiku no Jo. I think these two are really good. We only have 2 copies of Yamato, so being able to see one in our hand, I think it's good, and it's fine with our Kiku no Jo as well. And we are able to defend our Kiku no Jo with Rosinante. We have a 2K, we have a blocker. I think that's fine. See, so this is a playable hand, and we have a 2Ks in Kawamatsu. So as long as if I would keep this hand, my playstyle would be, obviously, if I'm going first, trying to make sure that my opponent is at 3 life. So on my second turn, going first with 3 Dawn attached to Arlong, play Kiku no Jo. The disadvantage is that like you have to summon Kiku no Jo first before your opponent like decides if they're gonna take the attack or not. Once they see Kiku no Jo and they're like at 4 life, they might be tempted to counter because they want to deny Kiku no Jo's effect. So just keep that in mind when you're playing Kiku no Jo and you're using Arlong's ability. So if your opponent is not at 3 life, in this case, since Kiku no Jo is the only character that you have right now, on your starting hand, that you can use with Arlong's ability, I would definitely protect her until your opponent is at 3 life. So using your Capone and using your Rosinante, and take life as well. So that's kind of how I would play. This is a playable hand, I think. All right. So that's kind of like the mulligan and just my thought process. And I'm using the Nakama deck website. All of my decks are on there. So if you want to just try this little mechanic here where you can draw and see the cards that you get in life and the cards that you get in hand, I think it's fun. But yeah, anyways, let's go ahead and keep going on with the deck profile. Alright, so let's talk about the early game. And I did touch upon it a little bit. But generally speaking, these are the cards that you definitely want to see early on and in life. And ideally, you want to see two. Doesn't matter if it's like 2 Inurashi, 2 Nekomushi, 2 Kiku no Joes. Between your second and third turn, you want to see 2 of these in any combination, because you want that board. You want to put pressure, not mindless pressure, right? You want to put pressure. You want to cheat out cards and pressure your opponent before you get to your big guys and all the other things that this deck can do. Okay, this is the early game that you want. You want to push to have 2 of these bodies, or at least be able to, if your opponent is answering your board, that's fine. They're using their resources to answer your board. There's nothing you can do about it. But at the very least, you want to be able to attack for 7, use leader's ability, and push out a body, at least once every turn. That's why you need 2. On your first turn, you're not doing anything. Your second turn is when you should be doing something and you should be using your leader ability. And on your third turn is when you need to be using your leader ability. Your second and your third turn are very crucial in using your leader's ability to push for 7 and summon a body. After the third turn, when you're going into your fourth turn, which is either your 7 Dawn turn if you are going first, or your 8 Dawn turn if you're going second. So this is your 4th turn. Then using your leader's ability it just depends on the state of the board. Sometimes it's good to keep using your leader's ability and attacking for 7 and still building, summoning one of these like beaters. Or perhaps it's just better to play the Enel. Maybe it's better to play the Hordy Jones. Or maybe it's just better to use your blocker summon your blocker Momonosuke and gain a life, right? Just depends on the state of the board. But your second and your third turn, you need to be using your ability. That's why you need 2 of these guys. Having one in hand is fine. Chances are you'll probably draw into one of them. If you have one of these and Momonosuke, that's a perfect hand because you can. All of these are searchable through Momonosuke. Land of Wano, 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 and Wano. So that's the strength of the Wano deck, because just the Searcher Momonosuke really puts everything together. But this is what you want. Once you're past your 3 turns, now you're going into your 7th Dawn turn or your 8th Dawn turn, or your kind of your mid game. Then that's when you start thinking about the other cards in your deck that you can use. Do you want to, let's say your opponent has like blockers on, you have 1 or 2 of your characters ready to attack or in defense, or I'm sorry, rested, right? And you know that your next turn your opponent's gonna try to attack into them to kind of clear them. Well, perhaps it's best to leave 2 Dawn up during your last turn for Punk Gibson. Or you can play a Rosinante your last turn to protect them. Going into this turn, going into your 4th turn, where you can play Momonosuke or another Brûlé, or whatever. So you're trying to kind of... Punk Gibson helps you simultaneously defend your characters from potentially 2 attacks. It also sets you up in being able to go for a sneaky win, because if they have blockers up, you can rest them with Punk Gibson. Okay, Rosinante helps you protect your characters from either a big attack, or if they're playing Sakazuki, you can protect your rested characters from effects as well. So Rosinante is good. Momonosuke, if you feel like you're being pressured and you've taken a lot of life because for whatever reason, right? Maybe your opponent has been very aggressive, and he's been attacking your life, and you need Momonosuke as a blocker to defend yourself and gain a life. Play Momonosuke, right? Read the matchup, how it's going. If it feels that aggression is on your side, or if the aggression is on your opponent's side. Who's the one that needs to clear the board? Who can afford to keep their characters up? These cards in the mid game, these cards help you to kind of be more aggressive or defend yourself, and simultaneously kind of set yourself up for the end game or finish the game quickly. That's why I like Punk Gibson, because it's just so flexible, defending, and you can use it in an aggressive way to rest a blocker and go for a sneaky win. So that's why I put 2 of these in there. Again, these are all defensive cards. I mean, but they're flexible. Momonosuke, blocker, gain a life. Punk Gibson, potentially block 2 attacks, rest a blocker. Rosinante, a blocker with a really good effect that stops one of your rested characters to be KO'd. And Brûlé. I mean, Brûlé is just a basic blocker, but sometimes when she's in hand, you can still play her. But yeah, read the game, read the flow of the game and how it's going for you. This Wano deck, has the tools to be aggressive and has the tools to do yellow things, which is gain life and gain momentum from your life. That's why we have the Momonosuke. That's why we have, these cards. When they come out from life, it's crazy. It feels so good. That's why we have Yamato, right? So again, the Wano build does yellow things, gain life, attack from life with like Kikunojo, Kawamatsu, defend from life with Onami and Beige, and the green is there to support your yellow cards, your yellow Wano cards, essentially. So yeah, that's kind of the mid game. Once you reach the end game, there's a bunch of different ways to kind of play out your turns, but essentially speaking, what you're trying to do is you're trying to end the match or the game, as quickly as possible, but you don't want to rush it, right? So there's a difference between ending it in a smart way, playing fast, ending it in a fast way, and then rushing yourself to end the game. That's the difference between playing like a Horty Jones and resting, a blocker of theirs while they still have 2 cards left in life and like 4 or 5 cards in hand. That's kind of a bad move. That's rushing. That's you trying to rush in ending the game. In those situations, it's probably better to play Yamato, play Momonosuke, gain a life, stall out a turn or two while playing big bodies and chipping away at their life. Okay, that's what you want to do. Even though the Wano cards are very flexible and let you do things, let you gain life or let you rest, blockers to get through them, like what green usually does, lets you do, both things. Your resources are not infinite. You can't loop them like you can with like Sakazuki or Moria, where they can, just loop almost infinitely, using the cards in their trash and putting them back in and drawing them. So you have to be wise on how you use your resources to end the game. Again, not rushing. Okay, so I think at the end of the day, this is still kind of an Arlong deck, and what that means is that traditionally Arlong would push very aggressively, and its win condition would be you either have the counters or you don't, right? And Arlong has evolved to where it's not mindlessly aggressive or reliant on just like, if you have counters then I lose. Instead, it's more flexible, but it's still an Arlong deck where it doesn't want to drag the game out. Alright, so always keep that in mind. And that's kind of the Arlong Wano build for you. So let me know what you guys think. I have the deck list. Deck list is there in the start of the video. Try it out. If you guys like it, cool. If you guys tried out some different cards, replace certain cards with other cards, let me know. I think another card that we're missing in here is Amaru. Amaru is a great card. It helps you get through blockers, besides without having to use Horty Jones, without having to use Izo. Amaru is another card that I didn't include in the deck, but I think it fits very well. So if there are other cards that perhaps I missed or that you include that also work for you, just go ahead and comment below. Let me know. Let me know how it went for you. Thank you for watching, and until the next one.